Tonight, at our anniversary dinner, my wife tried to cash in on a $5,000 office bet that she could make me cry in public. She picked the steakhouse, set up her phone for memories, and told her friends to watch me break. They call it Operation Waterworks. I call it the day I stopped pretending. I'm 38, I've buried a brother, and I've carried a father's expectations. So yeah, tears aren't new to me. But being turned into a paycheck? That was new. If you've ever felt someone using your soft spots as leverage, you'll get why I brought a briefcase instead of flowers. Inside wasn't jewelry, and the toast she rehearsed wasn't the only performance. When she reached for my heart, I reached for receipts. What happened next made the whole restaurant go silent, and it wasn't because I sobbed. If you want to know how a bet backfired in front of a room full of strangers, keep listening to me. People say marriage settles into a rhythm. Ours did. Sunday grocery runs, ball games on TV, her Pilates class, my garage time polishing the '67 Mustang my dad left me. We split bills, swapped passwords, and promised no secrets. I believed we were solid, not flashy, just two adults choosing each other every day. When friends asked how we were doing, I'd shrug and say, "We don't do drama. We do leftovers and Netflix." We had our spats, whose turn to take the trash, why I worked late, but they ended with takeout and a tired truce. She held me when my brother died, tucked the funeral program into a keepsake box, told me grief was love with nowhere to go. I thought that meant safety. Looking back, the clues were there. The smirk when I cried at movies, the way she'd test boundaries, then smile if I apologized first. At the time, though, I called it marriage. That night, I learned better. Tyler wasn't a close friend, more like the guy you nod to at holiday parties. We'd talked football, swapped small talk over burnt coffee, nothing deep. So when a LinkedIn ping lit up my phone on a Wednesday afternoon, I almost ignored it. "Hey man, awkward message," it started, "but you need to know something." Not a DM you expect on a professional network sandwiched between recruiters and congratulations. He asked me to check Ashley's Venmo with 3 names: Jessica, Megan, Brittany. Said there was a thing I should see. My first instinct was to laugh. LinkedIn drama? Then Tyler added one line that made my palms sweat. "It's about her making you cry." I stared at those words, the cursor pulsing like a heartbeat. I called him. His voice was steady, almost apologetic. He'd overheard a conversation at work. A bet, $5,000. Public tears. I thanked him, hung up, and opened Venmo. My hands shook. I mistyped password. Venmo feels harmless. Split pizza, pay the sitter, toss a friend gas money. I scrolled through Ashley's history expecting emojis and brunch. Instead, 3 payments sat like landmines, all from a month ago. From Jessica, $1,500 with a confetti emoji and "can't wait to see this." From Megan, $2,000 captioned, "This is too easy." From Brittany, $1,500, "He's gonna bawl like a baby." The totals stacked to $5,000. I clicked through dates, screenshots piling up in my camera roll. There were earlier requests too, test transfers nicknamed practice round. My chest buzzed like a hornet's nest. I wanted an explanation, office prank, charity thing, anything that made me not the punchline. The payment notes wouldn't let me off the hook. The more I looked, the clearer it got. They weren't talking about a movie or a team. They were talking about me. I put the phone down, then picked it up again, like touching a hot stove twice to be sure. I kept rereading one caption because it hit something raw in me. "He's gonna bawl like a baby," I've cried before. Cried. When Dad handed me the Mustang keys. When my brother's casket lowered and the pastor's voice cracked. When the dog got old and the vet said it was time, those tears felt human. But this line wasn't about humanity. It was about spectacle. I imagined office laughter, cups of burnt break room coffee, someone saying, "Mark always gets misty, free money." The phrase, "like a baby," burned. Not because men shouldn't cry, but because my grief had become a prop in someone else's prank. I zoomed in on the emojis, cry-laugh faces, a camera, a money bag, and saved another screenshot. My heart did that drumbeat you feel before bad news, one you try to outbreathe. I scrolled further, hoping I'd misunderstood. Then 3 words killed that hope. Anniversary dinner plan. That's when the room felt smaller, like the walls had leaned in. Ashley's iPad lived on the kitchen counter, mostly a recipe book and Pinterest board. She forgot she was signed into messages there. I tapped the icon, half hoping for nothing, half dreading everything. The thread name hit like a slap. Operation Waterworks. The blue and gray bubbles stacked for months. GIFs, bullet points, rehearsal lines. Restaurant with good lighting. Red dress, hair down. Say you've been thinking about his brother. They weren't guessing. They were engineering. Someone posted a photo of Ruth's Chris with a note. Public, classy, loud enough to capture audio. Another bubble. Angle phone against wine bottle. I scrolled and screenshotted until my thumb cramped. There was a checklist for triggers. Dad's expectations, brother's accident, career timeline, kids. A coworker wrote, "He'll crumble if you question his stability." They even discussed payment timing. "Funds clear once we get the video." I stood there with the refrigerator humming beside me, realizing I wasn't loved into tears. I was being steered into them. The tone in that chat was the kind that makes people feel dirty. Jessica played hype woman. "You've got this, Ash. He's sensitive. Work it." Megan was the strategist. "Wait until the toast. Make it about legacy. Mention his dad wanting grandkids." Brittany added spice. "Go harder. Say she's not sure he's emotionally stable." Every often, a laughing emoji or a gif of a waterfall. They weren't nervous about hurting me, they were excited about winning. One message stuck. "Remember, full ugly cry, head in hands if possible." Another, "Record without him noticing, angle on his face." They traded lines like sales scripts. I searched for someone to pump the brakes, for a voice saying, "This feels wrong." The closest anyone got was, "LOL, that's messed up," followed by, "But I love it." The chat ended with a toast emoji and, "To 5 grand and a story." That word, story, made stomach twist then. I wasn't a character. I was a target. I thought the worst part would be the money. It wasn't. It was the script. They had bullet points for my brother's death. Mention the highway, the rain, the song that played at the service. They had lines about my dad, hint at grandkids, question whether he'd be proud of my career. They even debated order, like they were designing a presentation. Lead with brother, save dad for the toast, close with maybe you're not emotionally stable. Reading that, I could picture Ashley at the kitchen table, highlighter in hand, practicing how to land each blow. I remembered the night I first told her about the accident, the way she rubbed my back and said, "I'm here." She was taking notes. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was surgical. The climax of that section messages was one line in Ashley's bubble. "He'll probably apologize and beg me to stay." That's when anger finally stood up inside me and refused to sit. I sat at the kitchen table where we'd balanced budgets and birthday candles and let the years march past me. 7 anniversaries. The chipped mug she said was lucky. The road trips with gas station coffee and off-key singing. The first time she tried sushi and pretended to like it for my sake. I lined up those memories next to the chat thread and they didn't fit. It was like finding a hidden track under a favorite song, one that changes the chorus once you hear it. Was any of it real? Did she hold me at the funeral because she loved me, or because she was learning my pressure points? The questions piled up like mail you keep promising to sort. I felt foolish and old, like the punchline at my own party. Then a stubborn part of me spoke up. Maybe I'd been blind, but I wasn't powerless. The hurt was sharp, but under it, something steadier arrived. Resolve inside. I wanted to storm into the bedroom, wave the screenshots, and demand answers. I pictured the fight, the crocodile tears, the promises to change. Then I pictured the chat again. Payment on delivery. If I confronted her without a plan, I'd hand her the scene she wanted. So I did what guys at work say. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. I backed up everything to the cloud and a thumb drive. I called a family lawyer, not a buddy. I opened a separate bank account. I walked apartment and photographed valuables. I rehearsed my breathing like I was walking into a negotiation. That night, she asked if I was excited for our big dinner. I said yes, and meant it differently. The climax, for me, was quiet. A decision to stop being the mark. I wasn't going to cry on command. If there were tears, they'd be mine, and for the right reasons. Tomorrow, I'd take back the script. First, I treated our home like a crime scene, not a marriage. I copied everything: Venmo screenshots, chat logs, calendar entries, even the photo of Ruth's Chris saved in their thread. I exported the iMessage history from the iPad and emailed a zipped file to myself with a boring subject line, receipts. Then I printed the worst bubbles on plain paper because ink on a table sometimes hits harder than pixels. I saved backups to a new cloud folder and a thumb drive I taped under the bottom drawer of my toolbox. Old habits from my dad: 2 is 1, 1 is none. I wrote a short timeline, kept it factual, removed the heat from my sentences. At lunch, I called a family attorney, not a buddy with opinions. Her intake assistant asked for documents. I sent everything and waited. The climax came quietly, a calendar ding. Consultation confirmed, Friday, 2 p.m. I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath. Tyler suggested coffee in a neutral place, the kind of chain where the music is soft and the chairs are loud. He looked uncomfortable, like a man who'd brought a neighbor bad news about their fence. He laid out what he'd heard: Ashley bragging over lunch, coworkers egging her on, the dollar amount, the timeline. He didn't embellish. He even said I could record him, which I did, phone face down, one-party consent in our state. He added pieces I hadn't seen: Ashley testing fake tears in the restroom mirror, a coworker reminding her to hold for camera. What got me was how ashamed he looked, although he hadn't done anything wrong. He said, "If my wife was planning this, I'd want someone to warn me." We talked football for a minute just to breathe. When we stood, he gripped my shoulder like men do when words feel clumsy. The climax landed in 4 ordinary words: "I believe you, man." Over burgers at a diner, Tyler remembered. Last spring, Ashley joked about winning $500 by faking a panic attack the weekend of Jake's bachelor party. She told them I skipped the trip to take care of her, and everyone clinked glasses. Another time, she tried to talk me into selling my dad's '67 Mustang because, she said, grief couldn't live in a garage. Tyler said they had a scoreboard: wagers about spouses, coworkers, family. Who could get someone to cancel plans? Who could pry a secret loose? It was cruel the way a schoolyard dare gets cruel when no adult steps in. I pictured Ashley writing numbers on a whiteboard, laughing louder than the joke. He emphasized he'd never bet and that he'd stopped eating with them. I believed him. The climax wasn't a shout, it was a question. If this had been going on for a year, how many stories had I told Ashley that paid for drinks? Jake has been my friend since high school, the guy who helped me push the Mustang when the battery died and didn't complain about grease on his jeans. His bachelor party was simple: fishing in the morning, cheap wings at night, bad decisions limited to extra hot sauce. The night before the trip, Ashley paced the apartment breathing fast, said her chest was tight, said she needed me home. I canceled. I told Jake I was sorry, promised to make it up to him. He said, "No worries, man," but I could hear the wobble. Sitting in that kitchen with the chat open, I realized she'd cashed in on my kindness like a coupon. Jake later admitted the guys assumed she didn't like them. I defended her then. The climax of that memory hurt. A text from Jake that weekend. Group photo, their smiles wide, an empty space on the end of the bench where I should have been sitting alone. My dad's '67 Mustang isn't just metal. It's Saturdays with a socket set and classic rock on the radio. When I was 16, he slid the keys across the counter and said, "Take care of what takes care of you." After he passed, that car became the place I heard him. Ashley said the Mustang kept me stuck. She framed it as healing. Sell the car, move forward, be present. Reasonable words with an edge. Every few weeks she'd bring it up: insurance, parking, grown-up priorities. I almost listed it once. Tyler's story snapped that spell. In the chat, a coworker wrote, "Make him sell the car, it's holding him back." Another replied, "Offer to help with the listing, he'll fold." My stomach dropped. She wasn't worried about me, she was testing control. The climax was simple. I walked to the garage, put my hand on the hood, and promised my dad that I'd keep what he trusted me to carry. 4 days isn't much time, but it's enough if you stop bleeding emotions and start building checklists. Day 1, document. I labeled folders by date, saved duplicates, and wrote a 1-page summary a stranger could understand. Day 2, logistics. New bank account, new email, a P.O. box, and a credit freeze to keep surprises from multiplying. Day 3. Strategy. I mapped the dinner like a mission. Arrival, seating, phone angle, exit options, who to signal if things got loud. Day 4. Composure. I practiced breathing while standing, counting 5 in, 5 out. I rehearsed lines that were true and short. I ironed a shirt because my dad believed in showing up clean when things get messy. I packed a briefcase, not for drama, but to remind myself I had choices. The climax of that week lived on a sticky note by the door. Don't perform, tell the truth. Tell. Let the room decide. I walked past it every time doubt tried knocking. Ms. Carter's office smelled like paper and coffee, which is how I imagine confidence smells. She was direct without being cold. I told the story from the start, keeping my voice even, letting the documents do the heavy lifting. She asked clean questions: dates, accounts, property, kids. No kids, condo purchased pre-marriage, separate retirement. She nodded, made notes, and explained the difference between emotion and leverage. You don't have to punish her, she said. You have to protect yourself. We discussed filing, service, and what to expect at the restaurant if things went sideways. She suggested I carry a simple line in my pocket. Ladies and gentlemen, I have evidence my wife bet money to humiliate me. She said to say it once, then hand over the papers. No speeches, no name-calling. Let the facts be loud. The climax was her last instruction. When you walk out, eat dinner. Don't surrender your appetite to someone else's choices. Simple, adult, anchoring. Money isn't romantic, but it keeps the lights on and lawyers paid. Ms. Carter told me to create clean lines, separate account, separate card, updated beneficiaries. I spent an afternoon at a bank across town, a place Ashley never used. I set up alerts on my phone so I'd see any transfer out of our shared bills account. I froze my credit and checked my reports, just in case an emergency card appeared. I printed a list of assets, condo, car, retirement balances, and took photos of jewelry and electronics in the apartment. I set aside cash for a month, groceries, gas, co-pays. Older guys at work had warned me, plan while your head is clear because storms make lousy decisions. The banker asked if I was starting a small business. I said, something like that. The climax felt silly but solid. I bought a fireproof envelope and put it in the bottom of the closet with copies of everything, then slept better. In our state, one-party consent isn't sneaky, it's insurance. I downloaded a voice recorder that lives behind a calculator icon, the kind you forget is running until you need it. I tested it by reading the sports page, then slipped the phone in my pocket and went about my day. I didn't chase drama. I captured reality. When Ashley called to confirm the reservation, I let the app listen. When she practiced her toast in the shower, I let the fan cover my breathing. I took photos of her phone positioned against a wine bottle, just in case someone asked later why I was sure. I emailed copies to an address and labeled them by date and time. This wasn't about winning the internet. It was about not being called a liar. The climax came with a ping. The recorder caught her telling Jessica, "Tomorrow's the cry. Make sure the girls are watching." I stared at the waveform like a heartbeat. The night before our anniversary, the apartment hummed with small sounds. Washer spinning, fridge clicking, Ashley's excited footsteps like tap shoes on hardwood. She flitted from mirror to closet, practicing smiles, testing camera angles, asking if I preferred her hair up or down. I said she looked great either way and meant it without letting it move me. My briefcase sat by the door like a sleeping dog. I checked the papers one last time, then left them alone. We ate takeout on the couch. She leaned into me, warm and light, and asked what my surprise was. "You'll see," I said. She laughed. "It can't beat mine." I sipped water, counted 5 in, 5 out. Later, in bed, she set an alarm titled Showtime. I watched the numbers glow on the ceiling and wondered how many men had needed to learn the difference between love and control the hard way. The climax arrived softly. I fell asleep first for once. Ruth's Chris smelled like butter and seared ribeye the second we stepped inside. Low light washed the booths in amber, the kind that flatters secrets and rings. Waiters moved like traffic cops in suits, quiet, precise, knives shining under the chandelier. Couples leaned close over sizzling plates. A birthday table sang off-key. The kind hostess said congratulations and led us to a corner banquette with a perfect view of the room. I logged every detail the way older men memorize torque specs, exits, sight lines, the hum of conversation that can swallow a raised voice. Ashley squeezed my hand like a coach sending in a play. I breathed slow, sat tall, set my briefcase beside me like a quiet oath. The linen napkin felt heavy across my lap. Somewhere across the floor, a champagne cork popped. I pictured that sound landing on tomorrow. I was not there to perform. I was there to end a performance. Once and cleanly. Ashley arrived in a red dress that knew the room before she did. It was the one I used to say belonged to Saturday nights and good decisions. She smiled big, the kind that shows every tooth without showing a single doubt. I wore my best suit, the one that fits like a handshake, and carried the briefcase that had become my lighthouse. The hostess laid menus the size of road maps and poured water that winked in the candlelight. Ashley adjusted her bracelet and asked what was inside the case. I said it was her surprise and let mystery do the heavy lifting. A waiter offered wine. I passed, said antibiotics, kept my head clear. She laughed, called me a lightweight, and ordered something with legs. Under the table, I tapped my foot to the baseline of the room and let the rhythm slow me down. The plan could wait 20 minutes. First, I wanted her tells tonight. She angled her phone against the wine bottle like a director calling for a close-up. For memories, she said, voice bright, lens aimed straight at my face. The red timer winked at me between the salt and the pepper, small enough to ignore if you wanted to lie to yourself. I moved my water glass an inch, just enough to let it catch the reflection. A waiter slid hot plates past the lens and the camera fogged for a beat, then cleared. Ashley checked the framing like she was shooting a commercial. Years ago, I might have joked about her inner Spielberg. Tonight, I counted beats and filed the moment under proof. If you have ever raised teenagers, you know the look. The one that says, I can get away with this. She had it. I lifted my napkin, dabbed the corner of my eye, and let her think the first crack had started. It had not started anywhere but hers. At first, the dinner played by the book. Bread basket, butter melting like new snow, small talk about office renovations and a neighbor's yappy dog. The steaks hissed on arrival, potholders guarding the plates like shields. We did the couple routine older diners know well. How was your day? Did you mail that thing? Should we try the creamed spinach? She touched my wrist and laughed at a story I have told 100 times about the time my brother and I tried to rebuild a carburetor and ended up rebuilding our patience instead. The room was warm, the service flawless, and if you squinted, you could pretend nothing strange lived between us. That is how denial works. It lets you eat, it lets you smile, and it whispers, maybe later. I smiled back, gave her normal, and stored my strength. The climax of that course came with a clink. Ashley lifting her glass just a little higher than usual. Ashley eased the talk toward family the way a driver drifts toward an exit you did not agree on. She asked about my mom, whether she was still attending church on Wednesdays, whether the roof leak got fixed. Then she shifted to my dad, his favorite sayings, the ones he used to hammer into me like nails. She asked if I ever thought about what kind of grandfather he would have been. The question had gravity, and it was designed that way. She brought up my brother, the teacher who loved second graders and hated spreadsheets, and said she wondered what he would think of the man I had become. I answered gently, kept my edges tucked in. I talked about football Sundays and fishing trips, not promotions or timelines. She smiled with her eyes but not her mouth. I could feel her fishing for the deep water. I kept us in the shallows until the next wave rose nearby. I gave her answers with the edges sanded off. It is an old trick for hard conversations. Keep your sentences short. Keep the verbs plain. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. When she asked about goals, I said I was grateful for steady work. When she asked about kids, I said timing matters more than pressure. When she asked if I ever felt behind, I said comparison steals joy and reached for the salt. The waiter checked on us, and I noticed her frustration flicker like a light with a loose bulb. She wanted a crack, any crack, to pour her speech into. I told a simple story about my brother showing up with egg sandwiches the morning I moved apartments. It was true and unthreatening, and it kept the table boring. For older men listening, you know the move. Starve a bad script of energy. The climax arrived in her eyes. She had decided to raise the volume. Ashley's smile thinned the way a line thins when you pull it tight. She checked the phone, adjusted the angle, and lifted her chin like a boxer testing distance. She started to over-enunciate certain words, the ones designed to bruise. If you have ever coached Little League, you know the look when a kid wants to swing for the fence instead of take a pitch. That was her, coiled and impatient. She asked about promotions again, then framed it as potential, then framed it as wasted potential. She mentioned our anniversary in a way that felt like a countdown, not a celebration. I sipped water and let the quiet do its slow work. The room felt warmer, and not from the plates. Somewhere behind me, a waiter laughed politely at a joke I could not hear. Ashley took a breath that gathered air from 3 tables. The show was about to start. The camera already knew its lines perfectly. She raised her glass and tapped it with a nail until the ring cut the room like a bell. "To 7 years," she said, eyes glossy with performance. People nearby smiled the way strangers do when they smell romance. I lifted my water and gave her the smallest nod. She started her script like a teacher easing into a lesson. She talked about partnership, about growth, about seasons. Then she curved toward the weather I knew was coming. She said she had been thinking about my brother lately, how tragic it was, how the world never got to see the man I could have been. She said my dad would have loved grandchildren by now, and what a shame it was I had not made that dream real. I let one breath stutter on purpose. The camera loved that. She leaned forward, elbows on linen, ready to press the bruise. The entire table leaned with her, even the silverware itself. She painted memories like she owned them. She talked about rain on the highway, about the song that played at the service, about how my brother once promised I would run a company by now, which he never said because he did not care about titles. She described my dad as a man who measured worth in grandchildren, which he did not. She layered disappointments the way a roofer layers shingles, one after another, designed to shed my defenses. The couple beside us stopped chewing. The waiter froze mid-pour. I could feel the room tighten like a belt. I let my eyes shine and blinked once, slow. Men who have buried fathers will understand the heat that lives behind the nose. I held it steady and thought of the Mustang idling in the garage. She said maybe I was not emotionally stable enough for the life she wanted. I said nothing yet. The silence held its own knife nearby. I let my shoulders sag like a man who has finally felt the weight he has been pretending not to carry. I let moisture pool just enough to glisten in the candlelight. I did not sniffle. I did not speak. I gave her the surface she wanted while I protected the steel underneath. Older men will understand the move. It is the face you learn at funerals when people say unhelpful things and you save your breath. Ashley watched my mouth for tremble and my hands for shake. I gave her neither. Under the table, my thumb found the record app and checked the running time. The briefcase waited by my leg, quiet as a docked boat before a storm. She began the line I knew by heart, the one that questioned my stability and our future. I lifted my water, set it down, and stood. The room inhaled with me. The next sound would not be sobbing from me. She leaned in for this final strike, the one she'd practiced in the mirror. Her voice softened, like a nurse before the needle. "I've been thinking about our future," she began, "and I'm not sure you're emotionally stable enough for the life I want." The phrasing was careful, almost clinical, designed to make me justify myself while the camera harvested the tremble. Older men will know that move. It is the audit wrapped as concern. I watched her eyes, not her lips, because the eyes tell you when someone is counting down. She glanced at the phone, then back at me, and I could feel the room tilt toward her script. My water glass left a circle on the linen. She waited for apology, begged for mercy, tears she could spend like chips. I lifted my chin a fraction, the way my dad used to when someone tried a cheap shot. If she wanted a finale, I had one for her. I didn't raise my voice. I raised a boundary. "You're right," I said, and let the words sit like a wrench on a table. The line hit her mid-sentence. She blinked, recalculating. "You're right that tonight decides our future." My tone was calm, the way a coach sounds when the play has already been called. I took one slow breath and felt my heels find the floor. When someone tries to box you in with an accusation, agree with the part that sets you free. Older guys taught me that. I added, "Thank you for the clarity." Her eyebrows asked a question her mouth didn't want to say. The phone's tiny red clock kept counting, greedy for tears. I gave it something else. Silence that didn't flinch. I could almost hear my brother laugh. Now, man. I pushed my chair back. Its legs spoke to the room. You're right, I repeated, then finished the sentence she started. About me being done. I stood. Not fast, not dramatic, just the way men stand when the decision is over and the doing begins. Chair legs scraped the floor, and conversation dimmed like someone lowered a fader. The waiter nearest us paused with a tray of creamed spinach balanced like a green moon. I buttoned my jacket because my father believed hard words deserve clean lines. The briefcase handle was warm against my palm. Ashley watched me rise with a look I knew from traffic stops, confusion giving way to concern. I faced her first, then the room, because courtesy matters even when courage does. Folks, I said, voice steady, I need 30 seconds. You could feel the shift. Forks held midair, birthdays blinking, strangers choosing whether to witness. If you've ever been in a courtroom or a church, you know that hush that settles right before truth rearranges furniture. I let the quiet land, then lifted my phone to eye level and started to speak. My name is Mark, I said, and my wife here placed a $5,000 bet with her coworkers that she could make me cry in public tonight. You could hear the sizzle of a steak 3 tables over and nothing else. She planned to use my dead brother and my father to get there, and she's recording it for proof. I didn't gesture. I didn't shout. I let the sentence sit, measured and plain, like numbers on an invoice. Older couples looked at each other with that long marriage glance that asks, "Did we hear that right?" Ashley hissed my name, told me to sit down, to stop embarrassing us. I kept my shoulders loose. "I'll be brief," I said. 30 seconds. I held up one finger, then let it fall. What you're watching isn't romance, it's a wager. The room absorbed that word the way a sponge absorbs a spill. A man in a sport coat muttered, "Good Lord." Ashley reached. I tapped the screen and swiped through screenshots the way you flip a field manual. Clear, numbered, undeniable. Venmo payments with captions written like dares. The group chat named Operation Waterworks. Bullet points for the toast. The camera angle perched on a wine bottle. And the promise of $5,000 on delivery. I turned the brightness up and let the nearest tables see dates and names. Jessica, Megan, Brittany. I didn't narrate. I presented. An older gentleman with a marine haircut leaned forward, squinting at the totals. A woman in pearls pressed her lips together and shook her head. Ashley moved to block the phone with her hand, but I stepped sideways and gave the room a clean sightline. "These are her words," I said. "These are her transactions." Then I set the phone flat, face up, like a card you can't argue with. The climax arrived as murmurs, that sound a crowd makes when truth is heavier than disbelief. Ashley's mask slipped fast. She lunged for the phone, then pivoted to tears that arrived on cue, but not on target. "This is abuse," she said, chest heaving. "He's controlling me. He's twisting things." The manager hovered near our table, hands folded, eyes steady, the way experienced people stay steady around messes. Ashley pointed at the camera and called me manipulative. I said nothing and kept my breathing even. Crowds don't need commentary, they need clarity. An older woman at the next table whispered to her husband and slid him a Kleenex without looking away. Ashley's words sped up, pitching from excuse to accusation to threat. "You'll lose everything," she said. "My dad's a lawyer." I heard Ms. Carter in my head. Let the facts be loud. So I let Ashley be loud. The climax arrived in her gaze when she realized the room wasn't with her. She wasn't directing anymore. She was just being seen, uncomfortably seen by everyone. I reached for her phone, faster than her reach, and held it where every table could witness. The little red dot still burned. I looked into the lens the way you look into a man's eyes when you shake his hand. "Hi, Jessica," I said. "Hi, Megan. Hi, Brittany." A ripple moved through the room like wind over wheat. "Enjoying the show?" My voice didn't climb. It landed. I angled the screen so the 3 names in the chat were bright as marquee letters. "You asked for full ugly cry," I continued. "Tonight you get full accountability. For men my age, you know the power of naming things plain." Ashley grabbed for the phone again and missed. I stepped back one pace and let the camera see my face without heat or pity. "You wanted a video," I said. Here's the part you didn't storyboard. The climax lived in the red dot as I lowered my hand toward the briefcase. The latches clicked like tiny hammers, two sounds I felt in my ribs. I opened the briefcase and lifted a manila envelope printed with my name and hers. Service copies were inside, clean, orderly, inevitable. I did not flourish it. I presented it the way you present a receipt at a counter. Ashley, I said, this is your anniversary gift. A couple gasped, the quick intake you hear when a plot turns. I slid the envelope across the linen toward her plate. Her hands hovered, then clawed. I kept my fingers clear. Filed this afternoon, I added, case number included. From across the room, a fork clinked on china and then nothing else. I remembered Ms. Carter's advice. No speeches, no names, let the paper speak. The moment had the gravity of signatures and the relief of clarity. The climax was the envelope stopping halfway, caught under a knife edge like a door propped open to the only exit left. I didn't add volume. I added closure. You've been served, I said, the phrase as boring and final as a stamp on a form. Ashley's mouth opened and closed like a door that lost its hinge. She looked past me for allies and found faces, not lifelines. The manager stepped closer, the way managers step closer when someone needs a boundary. I repeated the logistics calmly. Filed today, process server verified, you'll get an email too. Men nodded, not at me, but at the sense of it. We recognized the relief of a line drawn straight. Ashley tried a last pivot, claimed financial abuse, said I controlled passwords, said I weaponized grief. I didn't rebut. I placed a printed copy of the chat on the table, then set my palm flat beside it. Paper, hand, quiet. The climax of that minute wasn't my voice. It was the room itself, holding the weight of what was true while her words fell through. The restaurant exhaled. You don't hear relief so much as feel it, like air after a storm. Plates settled, forks touched down. The manager nodded once and stepped back. At the next table, an older woman with silver hair and a wedding set smoothed her napkin, leaned just close enough and said 5 careful words. Good for you, young man. She wasn't cheering a breakup. She was blessing a boundary. Her husband gave me the kind of nod fathers give at graduations. I sat, finally, and the chair held. I signaled the waiter, ordered the steak I actually came to eat, and let my pulse find a slower lane. Ashley was still talking to the room, but the room was done listening. I texted the group chat a single line. Bets off, she lost. Then I blocked the numbers. The climax of that chapter was simple. I picked up my knife and cut my own dinner, steady and free tonight. Ashley went loud, fast and fragile, accusing, trembling, pointing at the phone like it was a weapon and not her prop. He's abusive, he controls me, she said, stringing words together like beads on a trembling wire. I didn't match her volume. I matched my breathing to the restaurant's hum. Older couples watched with the kind of practiced stillness you learn after raising kids and paying mortgages, calm that makes noise look small. Ashley reached for pity, then for outrage, then for threats. You'll regret this. My dad's a lawyer. I kept my hands visible and my voice low. The screenshots speak, I said, and let the table hold them. Somewhere a sizzle pan quieted, as if the room leaned in to listen to facts instead of feelings. If you've ever refused to argue with a drunk story, you know the move. Tell one true sentence and stop. The climax arrived when she realized I wasn't her scene partner anymore. The manager approached like a good referee, hands open, voice measured, eyes on everyone's safety. Ma'am, let's step aside, he said. One security guard materialized with the calm of a man who's walked through 10 weddings and 3 bar fights. Ashley pivoted to him, tried sympathy, then volume. He didn't bite. We'll get you some air, he offered, steering the chaos gently away from fragile glassware. I kept my posture square and my tone polite. Sir, the reservation is in my name, I said. I'd like to continue my dinner. He glanced at the hostess stand, confirmed the record, and nodded once. Older diners returned to their plates the way folks return to a Sunday crossword after pausing for the weather. Ashley tried to grab the envelope again. The guard's hand stopped hers mid-air without heat. The climax came as a small sentence from the manager, directed to me, steady as a railing. You're fine here, sir. We'll handle her. I turned to the manager and asked for something simple that felt enormous in my chest. Could we switch this to a table for one? He didn't blink. Of course. The hostess whisked away the extra glassware, folded the second napkin into a quiet square, and reset the place with the clean choreography of a team that's seen life happen between appetizers and dessert. My briefcase moved to the seat where her clutch had been. The linen suddenly looked wider, the candle brighter, the room kinder. I adjusted my chair by an inch the way my dad once adjusted a picture frame after a long day, just enough to make things level. The waiter returned with a professional smile that held no judgment. "Ready to order, sir?" he asked. "Yes," I said, feeling the word click into place. The climax was not a cheer. It was an ordinary confirmation that felt like a ceremony. "Table for one it is." Security guided Ashley toward the door with the soft pressure you use on a shopping cart with a wobbly wheel. She cycled through faces, pleading, furious, shocked, victim, director, like a deck shuffled too fast. "You can't do this," she said to me, then to the room, then to no one. "I'll take everything." A couple at the bar pretended to study the wine list and did not look away. The manager held the door. Cold air touched the carpet. Ashley threw one last line over her shoulder about lawyers and reputations. The door closed with that hotel lobby hush that follows good insulation. Inside, the restaurant recalibrated. Plates moved again. A laugh restarted at a nearby table, cautious at first, then normal. I stared at the empty chair and felt how endings land. No fireworks, just absence shaped like a person. The climax was the quiet, the kind that follows a slammed car hood when you know the engine will finally run. The waiter returned like nothing irreversible had happened, which felt like mercy. I ordered the ribeye, medium rare, and the creamed spinach because my dad considered it a separate food group. "Champagne?" he asked, eyebrow lifted. I smiled. "Yeah, tonight deserves bubbles." The first sip tasted like new tires on hot asphalt. Clean, a little dangerous, entirely forward. An older woman 2 tables over signaled the waiter and sent a bottle with a note folded like church stationery. "For your freedom." I raised the glass in her direction. She nodded with the authority of someone who has seen a few storms end. The steak arrived hissing, butter pooling like a small lake. I cut a slice, watched the juices gather, and realized my hands were steady again. The climax of that minute wasn't dramatic. It was simple. I tasted food, really tasted it, and knew I hadn't lost my appetite for my own life. I unlocked Ashley's phone, opened the group chat still titled like a bad joke, and typed 7 words. "Bets off. She lost. Video attached." I sent the file to myself too because proof ages better in pairs. Then I blocked the numbers, each tap a small brick in a wall I should have built sooner. I set both phones face down and let the candlelight own the table again. A man in a sport coat passing to the restroom paused, touched my shoulder and said, "Solid." I nodded. No victory lap, no speech, just the clean click of doors closing. Older men listening will recognize the ritual. Do the paperwork, then put the file away. I folded the copy of the screenshots and slid them under the briefcase strap. The climax was quiet. Notifications still trying to crawl across the glass, and me choosing not to look. I ate warm food while cold noise cooled off somewhere else. People returned to their dinners, but kindness kept drifting by in small, human ways. The silver-haired woman who'd sent champagne stopped at my table on her way out and rested her hand on the back of my chair. 35 years married, she said. Boundaries keep love honest. Good for you. Her husband added a quick story about his sister's messy divorce and the day she finally said enough. A younger server whispered, "My mom would be proud of that speech," then scurried off before I could answer. An older man at the bar lifted his glass in that male shorthand we use when words feel clumsy. I wasn't collecting approval. I was collecting reminders that decency still recognizes itself. For anyone who's ever sat alone after a hard choice, you know the value of a nod from a stranger. The climax came from 3 ordinary syllables, spoken like a benediction as they left. "You're all right." Relief and sadness sat at my table like 2 uninvited guests who refused to leave. I missed the woman I thought I married and felt grateful the woman she was had walked out. That contradiction is familiar to anyone who has buried a season of life. You grieve and breathe at once. My jaw unclenched, my shoulders settled. I heard the scrape of forks and the soft choir of plates, and realized the world had not shrunk to the size of one broken promise. I texted Jake a simple line. Dinner went nuclear. Call later. He replied with a thumbs up and a proud of you. I thought of my brother, of egg sandwiches and bad music and the easy way he could reset my compass. The climax was a small mercy I didn't expect. I laughed once, short, surprised, honest, at a joke from the next table about the price of parking, and it sounded like a starting gun. By the time I paid the check, my phone vibrated like a jar of angry bees. Ashley had published a new version of events across platforms, long captions about ambush and abuse, a carousel of curated photos, and a quote about financial control. I didn't argue with a megaphone. I forwarded Ms. Carter the screenshots in the recording, then muted, not deleted, because records matter. Agnes, her mother, called me crying, said I'd destroyed her baby. I said I wasn't anyone's destroyer. I was my own protector. Then I sent Agnes the Venmo images and the chat title, and she went quiet in that way people go quiet when the story in their head collides with the one on paper. The climax was procedural, not poetic. Ms. Carter replied within minutes. Received. Do not engage. Will respond if needed. And I felt the safety of competent sentences wrapping the noise in tape. What I hadn't counted on were the other cameras. 3 diners had recorded the public parts, her toast, my 30 seconds, the envelope, and posted clips in local Facebook groups where neighbors swapped plumber recommendations and lost dog photos. The comments weren't a jury, they were a porch full of folks shaking their heads. Using a man's grief for a bet? Hard no. Someone recognized Ashley from the office park. Someone else tagged an HR friend. By the time I reached the parking lot, the views had climbed high enough to prove the point I hadn't tried to make. I didn't share the clips, didn't need to. The truth had advocates I'd never met. The climax arrived as a subject line from an unknown address. HR inquiry regarding incidents at dinner. I didn't answer from the car. I put the phone away, started the engine, and listened to the Mustang idle like a heartbeat finding its rhythm again. Monday looked ordinary until the emails started. Jessica, Megan, and Brittany each sent me paragraphs that read like PR templates. We were joking, taken out of context. We never meant harm. Attached were nothing, because the Venmo captions and the Operation Waterworks thread didn't need context. HR reached out next, asking for copies and times. I sent receipts without adjectives. A director called to assure me the company takes harassment and workplace gambling seriously, especially when company systems are involved. Older listeners know corporate tone, polite, careful, loaded. By afternoon, Tyler texted that the 3 were working from home indefinitely. He said the group chat had been archived by IT. He added, "You did the right thing." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a man returning rented dignity. That evening, I filed everything again under a new folder, employment fallout. The climax came as a calendar invite I didn't request, an HR interview scheduled for next day at noon. Agnes called first, her voice wet with anger and pity that didn't fit the facts. She was joking, she said. You embarrassed our family. I repeated one sentence I could defend in court. Ashley accepted money to engineer my humiliation. Silence worked harder than debate. Then her father called, a real estate lawyer who advertises on bus benches. He used big words for small threats: defamation, interference, reputational harm. I said Ms. Carter would happily reply in writing and then emailed him the screenshots with timestamps. He didn't respond. An aunt sent a Facebook message about forgiveness wrapped around a Bible verse. I said forgiveness doesn't require pretending. Older listeners will recognize the pattern: minimize, redirect, accuse, then retreat when the paper shows up. Late that night, Agnes texted, "You're too sensitive." I thought of my brother's funeral and the word sensitive as another word for human. The climax came when my phone rang again. A blocked number I let go. The blocked number belonged to her father again, now calmer and more formal. He announced he represented his daughter and demanded I retract false statements. I said I'd defer to counsel. 10 minutes later, Ms. Carter called him from her office and invited him to communicate by email only. She attached a neat packet, screenshots with metadata, a timeline, citations to state statutes on one-party consent, and company policies about harassment that his daughter had signed. She CC'd me so I could watch professionalism do its work. He tried a few last hand waves: context, marital privilege, public embarrassment. She replied with 3 lines. Facts are attached. Refrain from contacting my client directly. Further messages should state your bar number. Older men appreciate a clean boundary. His last email was the shortest. Received. The climax for me wasn't that he backed down. It was sleeping soundly. Ashley tried a different battlefield. My office. She showed up mid-morning with a tote bag and a story about financial abuse. Tears polished to a shine. Reception called upstairs. I asked security to meet me in the lobby. She started in on colleagues as they passed, whispering, I was gay, I was cheating, I was unstable, throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what rumor would stick. Security kept it professional, offered a conference room, asked if she needed water. I repeated one line, please direct communication through counsel. When she refused to leave, they escorted her to the sidewalk with the same patience you give a confused customer. An older coworker walked me back to the elevator and patted my shoulder. You handled that, he said, which in office language is a medal. HR followed up minutes later, incident logged. The climax happened upstairs when my boss closed his door, looked me in the eye and said, we've got your back. Rumors tried to sprout anyway. A cousin reposted Ashley's captions about me being controlling, about hidden credit cards, about emotional neglect, and tagged mutual friends from church. I didn't reply in comments. I sent Ms. Carter the links and went for a walk. By afternoon, the clips from the restaurant had made their way into the same threads. People who weren't there described the hush when I spoke and the way Ashley aimed for my scars. A neighbor wrote, I saw it, not abuse, accountability. Another posted a screenshot of the Venmo payments, names unblurred. Older folks from our building, the ones who remember borrowing sugar, sent private notes. We're sorry, son. It wasn't a victory parade, just a quiet shift where fiction ran out of oxygen. Late that night, Ashley texted from a different number, claiming she was pregnant. I asked for the doctor's name. She blocked me instead. The climax was a simple rule. Facts don't need speed, ever. I forgot she still had a key. That's on me, and it lasted 1 week too long. I came home to a door unlocked, a gaming rig smashed, drawers dumped, a framed photo of my brother face down on the carpet. The air felt wrong, like a room after a fight. My stomach jumped, then my training did. Back out, call police, wait in the hall. The camera by the bookshelf had done its job. Clear video of Ashley entering, rifling, sweeping an arm across my desk like a bad commercial. Officers arrived, took statements, watched the clip twice, and filed a report. I changed the locks that night and slept at Jake's. Older listeners know the rule our dads taught. Locks keep honest people honest, but documentation keeps the rest in line. Ms. Carter forwarded the footage to her father. The climax landed the next day, a case number in my inbox and a detective's card tucked under my door. A week later, an envelope arrived with no return address and a flourish of scented ink. Inside was an invoice from Ashley for 7 years of emotional labor, color-coded and itemized like a tax return from a parallel universe. Listening to work complaints, $50 per session, 2,190 hours. Pretending to enjoy sports, $75 per hour, 1,460 hours. Managing my family, flat fee $50,000. Total, $415,000 due upon receipt. I laughed, then didn't. It wasn't funny. It was delusion printed in 12-point font. I forwarded the document to Ms. Carter, who replied, frame-worthy, and added a paragraph about extortion and why this wouldn't play in court. Older men know the move. When crazy knocks, let counsel answer the door. For my own sanity, I wrote my own invoice on a sticky note, respect, trust, empathy, and marked it paid in full by me. The climax came as a small choice. I didn't keep her letter. I kept my sticky note on the fridge. The court date was surprisingly ordinary. Fluorescent lights, a docket that moved like a bus schedule, and a judge who'd seen more drama before lunch than I had in a year. Ms. Carter organized our file like a pilot's pre-flight. Complaint, exhibits, service, financials. No kids. Condo purchased before marriage. Separate retirement accounts. Photos of property already divided. The judge asked a handful of questions in a voice that belonged to Monday mornings. Ashley tried to change the subject to feelings, then to reputation, then to me, ruining her life. The judge steered us back to law the way a steady hand steers a boat. We're here for relief, not revenge. 10 signatures later, the shape of my life was different. I kept the condo, the car, my accounts. She kept her car and her retirement. No alimony, no drama. We walked out on separate carpets. The climax landed at the clerk's window when the stamp hit paper. Final, official, mercifully plain. In the weeks after the decree, consequences kept their slow, adult pace. HR completed its review. Jessica, Megan, and Brittany were terminated for policy violations, using company systems to coordinate harassment and gambling. Ashley's contract wasn't renewed. She moved back with her parents, according to Agnes, who called to tell me I'd ruined her baby's prospects. I said prospects ruin themselves. Job applications bounced when a quick search surfaced the dinner clips and the chat name. A fiancé left one of the coworkers. Another faced a complaint from a former colleague who remembered similar bets. None of it made me gloat. It made me mow the lawn, pay bills, and attend therapy. Older men will understand. You do the next right thing until right things pile up. One afternoon, Tyler texted a photo of the office whiteboard wiped clean. "No more scoreboard," he wrote. The climax was personal, quiet. I drove the Mustang at sunset, windows down, and didn't look back. 2 months out, I can finally see the 7-year road behind me without flinching. It wasn't all bad, that's what makes it complicated. But clarity has a way of cleaning the windshield. Freedom tastes ordinary and priceless. Quiet mornings, a kitchen that sounds like peace. I'm dating again, slow and honest. I sleep better. The Mustang is back from the shop, paint deep as a lake, engine tuned to a heartbeat I recognize. Therapy gives me tools. Faith in myself gives me breaks. I don't need a villain to feel strong. I just need boundaries that hold. I've learned the difference between privacy and secrecy, apology and manipulation, love and leverage. So here's the only toast that matters now. She bet I'd cry. And I did. Tears of joy, the day she walked out of my life. If your gut tells you something's wrong, listen. Don't ever let someone turn your pain into their entertainment. Choose well, peace or performance. Today.